Have you ever asked yourself why some women are irresistibly pulled toward men they know will never give them stability? Why the man who is kind, reliable, and safe is overlooked, while the unpredictable one, the rebel, the mysterious figure, the so-called bad boy, sets off a passion she can't even explain to herself? Carl Jung uncovered something unsettling about the female psyche that society still refuses to face. Deep inside every woman's unconscious lives, a dark, primal archetype, a force she secretly desires, but could never admit openly. This has nothing to do with cliches or stereotypes. It is about ancient psychological patterns that still shape desire today. What follows is not a light discussion on dating, but a descent into the hidden side of female attraction, truths that may leave you unsettled. Jung called this figure the shadow animus. For thousands of years, women lived in a world where safety wasn't guaranteed. The difference between life and death often depended on choosing a man who had strength, cunning, and the will to dominate threats. Those instincts never disappeared. They remain encoded in the female unconscious. As Jung put it, what is not made conscious rules us from the shadows. The shadow animus is that ruler. It doesn't care about comfort. It doesn't respond to manners. It waits for the man who carries real power, the kind that can't be faked. Look at history and literature, and the same figure repeats. Think of Achilles in Homer's Iliad, untamable even among his peers, or Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights, destructive yet unforgettable. These men aren't role models for a calm life, but they awaken something primal that reason cannot suppress. Women might not openly admit it, but their unconscious is tuned to pick up the scent of strength paired with danger. The appeal isn't cruelty, it's knowing he could hurt, but he doesn't. He could walk away, but he stays, for now. That tension is what the safe man can never replicate. Modern society pretends this archetype doesn't exist. We are told women only want kindness, stability, and cooperation, and yes, consciously they do. But the unconscious does not obey ideology. It does not scroll through dating apps and get excited by a polished resume. It is drawn to the man who shows he cannot be tamed by rules, who doesn't apologize for existing, who moves through the world with quiet certainty. Women may call it confidence, but it is deeper than that. It is the presence of someone who cannot be controlled. This is why millions of women find themselves bored despite having good men at their side. They can't explain the emptiness, but it's real. Jung's insight helps explain the contradiction. They are fighting against their own nature. They love the idea of safety, but they desire the charge that only danger brings. This is not a flaw in them. It's not an excuse for destructive men. It is the shadow at work, the unconscious predator who will not be silenced. And here lies the warning for men. Being endlessly nice, endlessly accommodating, endlessly safe will not burn your image into her memory. What she remembers is the man who carried a trace of danger, who didn't ask for approval, who felt untouchable. The question, then, is whether men can face their own shadow, the part of themselves society tells them to bury, the very part that women's unconscious is still waiting for. Jung believed that every man carries a shadow, the side of himself that society forces him to deny. It is made of the impulses civilization calls dangerous: aggression, selfishness, lust, competitiveness, the hunger to dominate. From childhood, men are taught to suppress these drives, to soften their edges, to apologize for their instincts. The result is a generation of men who look safe on the surface but lack the fire that women unconsciously search for. They are tolerated, but they are not desired. The truth is that this very shadow is what awakens a woman's primitive response. Not the fake, exaggerated version that men try to imitate, but the real presence of controlled danger. Think of a trained soldier or a martial artist. His aggression is there, but it is disciplined, contained, directed. Women sense this immediately. It is not the reckless barbarian who draws them in. It is the man who could destroy, but chooses restraint. Controlled power is more magnetic than any display of politeness. As the philosopher Seneca once wrote, "No man is more powerful than he who has himself under command." This explains why men who have been completely domesticated feel invisible. They show up with kindness, availability, and patience, but something essential is missing. Attraction does not ignite when a man seems afraid of his own strength. Women may praise such men as good guys, but their unconscious is unmoved. Meanwhile, the man who is unpredictable, sometimes late, sometimes absent, sometimes difficult, often holds her attention far longer. She knows he doesn't need her approval, and that makes his attention worth more when he chooses to give it. Consider the contrast. One man asks for permission before every step. The other reads her cues and moves when the moment is right. One man looks to her for validation in every decision. The other carries himself with a sense of inevitability, as if he already knows who he is. One man apologizes for his desires. The other owns them without shame. Women feel the difference instantly. They may not describe it in words, but they know it in their bodies. The second man touches something ancient in them, something that whispers, "This one has strength I can trust." Cultures across history have recognized this truth. The samurai of Japan practiced ruthless discipline not to become wild, but to master their own violence. The Spartans trained boys from childhood to hold both ferocity and loyalty in balance. Even today, we admire the leader who can be merciless in competition, but tender with his family. This duality, danger under control, is the essence of the masculine shadow women respond to. It creates tension, polarity, and above all, respect. Most modern men fail because they either suppress their shadow entirely or let it consume them. The first group becomes forgettable, forever trapped in the role of friend. The second group becomes chaotic, unreliable, and eventually destructive. The rarest men are those who face their shadow, integrate it, and walk with both edges intact. They are both safe and dangerous, both tender and unyielding. They cannot be fully predicted or controlled, and this unpredictability keeps the spark alive. Jung saw this integration as the path to wholeness. Nietzsche called it becoming a beast of prey and a shepherd at once. Women are drawn not to men who pretend to be flawless, but to men who accept their flaws as part of their nature and master them. The shadow does not need to be hidden. It needs to be harnessed. And until a man does this, he will remain either invisible or destructive. This is why the bad boy archetype continues to fascinate. It is not that women want cruelty. It is that most men have surrendered their edge, leaving only those who keep it alive, even in flawed ways, to ignite desire. Women would rather risk the storm with such men than endure the dullness of one who has traded his shadow for approval. The so-called nice guy is one of the most tragic figures in modern relationships. He is reliable, considerate, attentive, and often genuinely cares about the women he desires. By every rational measure, he should be the obvious choice. Yet time after time, he finds himself sidelined, friend-zoned, or left wondering why the women he wants are chasing men who treat them with indifference. He interprets this as unfairness, or as proof that women are confused about what they want. But the deeper truth is that he does not awaken the primal circuits of attraction. His strategy is built on logic and transaction, while attraction itself comes from something unconscious and irrational. The mistake the nice guy makes is thinking that accumulating good behavior creates desire. He opens doors, gives compliments, remembers every detail, and waits patiently, believing these things will one day be rewarded with passion. But passion is not a prize given out for good conduct. As Jung noted, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. The nice guy never creates that reaction because he avoids the friction that sparks it. His niceness isn't born from strength, but from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as anything other than agreeable. Women sense this fear instantly. A strong man who chooses to be kind radiates power, because his kindness is an option. A weak man who is nice because he's afraid to be otherwise radiates insecurity. And insecurity never ignites desire. This is why women often say they respect the nice guy, but don't feel drawn to him. Respect without polarity leads to friendship, not passion. And over time, his endless availability makes him invisible. There is no challenge, no unpredictability, nothing that requires her to earn his attention. The problem deepens because the nice guy places women on pedestals. He treats them as if they are fragile beings who must never be upset, disagreed with, or challenged. What he doesn't realize is that this strips away the very tension that fuels attraction. Real intimacy requires contrast, strength that meeting strength, differences colliding and creating sparks. When a man becomes a mirror, reflecting back only what he thinks a woman wants, she feels unseen. He becomes safe to lean on, but not compelling to pursue. The nice guy's emotional availability, which he believes is his greatest strength, often reveals itself as neediness. He wants to discuss the relationship constantly, to seek reassurance, to process every small shift in emotion. What begins as attentiveness soon feels like emotional weight, placing the burden of reassurance on the woman. Instead of being a source of strength, he becomes another responsibility. And when it comes to sexuality, the problem only worsens. Conditioned to fear his own desire, he hesitates, overthinks, and waits for explicit permission at every turn. What should feel natural becomes awkward. Instead of leading, he waits to be led, and women quickly lose interest. This tragedy is amplified by the fact that many nice guys actually do have valuable qualities. Their loyalty, kindness, and thoughtfulness could be attractive if rooted in confidence rather than fear. When a man with options chooses to be kind, that kindness is magnetic. When a man with self-respect chooses reliability, it feels valuable rather than desperate. But when kindness is the only tool in his arsenal, when reliability is his way of begging for love, it signals weakness instead of strength. The deeper truth is that women do not want to be the entire center of a man's life. They want to be desired by a man who already has purpose and direction. A man whose identity depends on her approval appears empty, as if he has nothing greater to live for. As Dostoevsky once wrote, a weak man is just by nature a slave. A man enslaved by the need for female approval cannot command respect, let alone passion. Women don't want to be everything to a man. They want to be the most important thing to a man who already has everything else in motion. The path forward is not for the nice guy to become cruel. It is for him to embrace strength alongside kindness, confidence alongside compassion, direction alongside loyalty. Niceness without power creates boredom. Power without care creates destruction. Integrated together, they create the kind of man who can ignite attraction while still being worthy of trust. Until a man learns this balance, he will remain the dependable option she never truly desires. Throughout history, women have been drawn not to men who are harmless, but to men who carry the capacity for harm and the discipline to restrain it. This paradox unsettles modern sensibilities, but it remains one of the deepest truths about attraction. A man who cannot fight will never feel protective. A man who can fight but uses his strength only when necessary awakens a sense of safety no words can provide. Jung understood this duality. The shadow is not meant to be erased, but integrated. Women are not attracted to cruelty. They are attracted to potential danger contained by self-control. This explains the fascination with soldiers, fighters, and leaders across time. The samurai, armed and deadly, lived by a code that demanded restraint and honor. The medieval knights swore to defend the weak, even while carrying the tools of violence. The same principle applies today when women are drawn to men in protective roles. Police officers, firefighters, athletes who carry intensity but channel it towards something higher. Their appeal is not brutality, but competence. As Aristotle once wrote, courage is the mean between cowardice and recklessness. The protective monster is that balance. Strength ready to be used, but only in service of something greater. This desire collides with modern culture, where men are told that any sign of aggression is toxic. As a result, many suppress their instincts so completely that they appear weak instead of controlled. Women sense this instantly. They don't want unnecessary violence. But they also don't want to feel they are the strongest presence in the room. The unconscious looks for a man who could dominate if needed, yet chooses not to. Without this polarity, attraction fades into neutrality, and neutrality never sustains passion. It is the same principle behind the allure of danger. The unpredictable man keeps her attention not because of recklessness, but because his approval feels rare and earned. His attention has weight. The safe man gives it freely, constantly, without challenge. The dangerous man gives it selectively, creating tension. Neuroscience calls this intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. The highs feel higher because they are contrasted with moments of uncertainty. This is why women describe certain relationships as intoxicating, even when they admit they are unsustainable. The chemistry of attraction itself is not built on steady comfort, but on polarity, unpredictability, and tension. This doesn't mean women want abusive men. The distinction is crucial. Constructive danger, the man who takes risks to build, create, or defend, is profoundly different from destructive danger. The man who indulges chaos for its own sake. The first becomes a source of admiration. The second becomes a source of trauma. The unconscious may initially respond to both, but wisdom is learning to distinguish between them. As Jung warned, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of others. Men who face their shadow are far less likely to misuse it. At the deepest level, women long for benevolent dominance, leadership that is competent, decisive, and protective, without being oppressive. It is not about control, it is about responsibility. A woman may be powerful in every other aspect of life, yet still feel relief in surrendering certain decisions to a man she trusts to lead wisely. This doesn't make her weak, it makes her human. The modern world denies this instinct, but denying it does not erase it. The unconscious does not negotiate with ideology. What, then, is the path for men? It is not to suppress their nature, nor to unleash it recklessly. It is to integrate the shadow, to become the kind of man who holds danger under discipline, the one who doesn't apologize for his masculinity, but also doesn't abuse it, the one who carries strength so that others may feel safe in his presence. This is the man who is remembered, desired, and respected. Women do not want perfection. They want a man powerful enough to be imperfect without fear. In the end, the tragedy of modern relationships is not that men are too strong, but that they have been convinced to bury their strength altogether. The women who feel restless beside them are not broken. They are responding to the same ancient code that has always guided human survival. To ignore this is to live blind to reality. To integrate it is to step into wholeness. Jung's lesson remains clear. We are not called to erase the monster within, but to master it. Only then can relationships satisfy both the demands of our civilized minds and the hunger of our primal hearts.